Hello, folks. What a slow news day. I tell you, there's just nothing to talk about. Not. All right, here we go. This is maybe going to be one of the most important shows I've ever done. And I think it's absolutely ordained by God because what God told me 57 years ago, I'll hold you in the cleft of the rock until we're at the very point, the tipping point where it looks like we could go into World War III. We're there, folks. We're right there. And wouldn't you know it, God also said that at that point, I'm going to bring your book out. So guess what we're announcing today? We're announcing the second book. It's ready to go. It's already loaded. You can go to Amazon and you can pick it up. And here it is, right here. I'm holding a real book. That's the proof book. I've already gone through it. Everything's ready to go. It's loaded on Amazon, and you can order it today if you'd like. And if you are not somebody who's followed me, so that you know you absolutely want to buy that book, go on the website anyway, and you can get a free chapter in there that you can read to get an idea if it's a book that you want to buy. So with that, let's get into this, dig into the meat. I want to tell you that this is not like, oh, I'm going to give you an announcement here. See what's on the screen right there? I guess I'm growing because people are now they're trying to basically get you to follow them. So this is a guy who's saying, come to WhatsApp. That's not me. That's absolutely not me. I don't do WhatsApp. So please disregard that. And if they're asking you for money, it's definitely not me. So let's go on down and get into this presentation. So I want you to understand something. This is really an important story. So I'm going to start off right off the bat, and I'm going to say, please, please, for the sake of yourself, of your family, of your neighbors, watch this thing all the way to the end. And when you're done, basically subscribe and then send it to every friend you know, because here's what I'm going to show you. 57 years of preparation, waiting for this time. There's all kinds of people covering this war. But what are they doing? They're showing you missiles are flying and embassies are getting exploded. That's not important. That's not what this is about. This is about how did we get here in the first place? How do we get through it? And what do we learn from it so we don't get in this situation again? So this show is intricate. I mean, intricate. I'm going to be covering basically the agenda of Islam to dominate the world. I'm going to be covering the EU and why they are the beast system. I'm going to be covering what the new Green Deal has to do with this war. I'm going to be covering what the U.S. Constitution has to do with this war. I'm going to be covering illegal immigration and what it has to do with this war. And I'm going to be covering election theft and what it has to do with this war. And lastly, I'm going to be talking about the population explosion and what it has to do with this war. There's nobody out there that is covering this or even capable of covering this in the detail that I'm covering it. This is what God has anointed me for. He gave me 57 years to study and an incredible memory so that I would be able to, in an instant, come into a situation like this, tie all the pieces together, and have this be a moment where we learn something, very valuable. We've just walked in to one of the most tense situations the world has ever seen. And if we don't learn from this, we're likely to turn around and walk into it again. So when this war is over and Iran has fallen, all of the things that caused it are still going to be in place, and you need to know what they are. So please, subscribe. Please listen to this to the absolute end. I'm telling you, this is important. This is something that I was ordained to do and something that you are supposed to hear. So with that, let's get into this presentation. Let's go to the next slide. So here's an announcement. I told you everything is lining up. Like I said, this book is ready to go. There's the QR code. If you want to buy it, you can go over there and buy it. If you're not sure, you can go to my website and you get a free chapter to read. Make sure that you know what it's about and it's something you want. But I guarantee you, it is a book that will teach you everything you need to know so that you can understand all the things that are happening. The newscasts don't teach you a thing. They just give you something to look at for the moment, but you don't walk away having learned anything. Let's go to the next slide, and we're going to go to a clip. There's about 6 or 7 clips in what we're doing today because I feel like this is so important that I have to document what I'm telling you so that it gives added credibility to the story that I'm telling. So let's play that clip if you would.
This was the announcement that told the Iranian people their supreme leader was dead. State television, official confirmation. On this broadcast, the regime promised revenge, a type of revenge that has never been seen in Iranian history. We'll get into what that revenge looked like in just a second. But first, let me show you how Iranian people are actually reacting, because this will surprise you. This is the city of Fars. People in the streets celebrating, and you can hear someone yelling into the camera, "Am I dreaming? Hello, new world." After 30 years of oppression, executions, and massacre, this is the reaction. Same thing in the city of Nuradabad. People are waving flags and chanting. And then in the city of Karaj, people are literally dancing on the metaphorical grave of the supreme leader. This man ruled with absolute power for 3 decades, and when he died, his people danced. This is something the whole world is watching. In fact, here we have the US Ambassador to UN, Mike Waltz, pointing out the irony in this in front of the Iranian delegation. Take a listen to his statement.
The United States strongly rejects this ridiculous and frankly farcical assertion that U.S. actions are inconsistent with international law. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted, quote, "Death to America" at every turn. It has sought to eradicate the state of Israel. It has waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder. It is responsible for a series of unprovoked armed attacks targeting the United States and Israel, violations of the UN Charter, and threats to international peace and security across the Middle East. It has even attempted to assassinate the U.S. President Trump. It has done so not only directly, but through its proxies, seeking to hide and mask its bad actions while publicly claiming to be a victim.
There you have it, folks. Now, look at this slide. So what do they want? They want world dominance, jihad, and they're willing to do anything to get it. That's why we have to have this war, because they're literally willing to have a world war where atomic bombs are used if they get what they want, which is their 12th Amman. So basically, these are people who are dangerous. Now look over the other side, and it says Sharia for Britain. So this is where we start to tell you how immigration is involved in all this. So they came into Europe by the millions, and now they're out birthing the people who are the natives in Europe, and basically they're saying, we want to take over the legal system. So Europe is losing its government, it's losing its demographics. I mean, it's just a total takeover. Absolute dominance is what they're looking for. Let's go to the next slide. And there it is. Islam will dominate the world. And they are known, to me at least, because I've studied, I guess I need to tell you something. Those of you who follow me already know this, but when I had my near-death experience, God told me immediately, go back and read the Bible cover to cover. When you finish that, go read the Quran cover to cover, because you need to know the enemy. And so basically, you need to understand that Islam is not a religion of peace. It's a religion of absolute domination, which is just exactly what you saw in that video clip and what you see on here. They are prepared to commit jihad across the entire world. Let's go to the next slide. And they call us what? The big Satan, and Israel, the little Satan, and they are more than prepared to drop an atomic bomb on one or both of us. That's why Donald Trump has to do this. That's why you see something that you probably didn't expect at least a couple of years ago, and that is the nations that are Islamic nations in the Middle East are siding with the United States of America because they see Iran as a threat to them and to the entire world. Let's go to the next slide. And we've got another clip that I'd like you to play. It just seems like no matter what happens in the news, God has spent this 57 years preparing me so that I know and can embellish the story. So I want you to look at that slide. Look at the bottom center in the red. It says freedom for Iranian women. So basically, women are treated like chattel in Iran. So here's what happens. This is going back way, way back. If you are a woman and you commit adultery, you can be buried up to your neck, you can be stoned, you can be killed, but there's no consequences if the man commits adultery. Women have no rights. They can't go out with their hair uncovered. Now, you see in this picture, they are. That's because there's pandemonium happening in the streets of Iran in revolts, and people have taken their burqas off. But look at this woman's face over there, like absolute anguish. And then look on the other side, and they're waving not only their flag, but they're waving the American flag. And the people in Iran are chanting, "We love Donald Trump. We love America." They have been suppressed for decades now. And America, with what we are doing, we are not the aggressors. We are freeing these people, and we are keeping the rest of the world free from a possible nuclear war. So there could be nothing more important than what Trump is doing. And Trump has already settled eight agreements, 8 wars, eight violent things that were happening around the world. And with this oil that is getting shut down, you may not think about it, but there's a side to it that's very positive. It's going to put pressure on Russia. It's going to put pressure on Iran itself. It's going to put pressure on China and pressure on the entire world to do what? To end this and end it quickly, because the entire world needs oil, and we're about to walk into a huge oil shortage. There's been a tanker that's already been sunk, and there's supposedly mines that have been set, and the flow of oil is about to get obstructed in a way that's going to make oil prices go through the roof. And it's not just a matter of the price, it's a matter of what happens if a nation can't get any oil at all. They have to shut down their factories, their distribution centers. This is serious. So God has it all planned. He knows exactly what's doing, and he knows exactly the pressure points to exert in order to get this thing to be done, and done quickly. Let's go to the next slide. And I can't seem to get through a single presentation without talking about the Bible. So this picture that you see up in the upper left, this is from my third book, which I'm submitting to the publisher within the next few weeks, and it will be out before the year is out. And we're talking about the horsemen, and we're talking about the role that the Bible says that Iran plays. And it basically says they want jihad, which means global dominance at any price whatsoever. They want the entire world to submit to them. They are the pale green horse of the Bible. And look at the seal down below. They're the fourth seal. So they are biblical. And look at the sword down below, and look at that saying, behead those who insult Islam. So before I go on, let's play the clip associated with this. Then I'll come back and read you what's on this slide.
It's one of the biggest stories around, but you rarely hear about it in the major news media. The persecution of Christians all around the world. Take a look.
More people around the world embrace Christianity than any other religion, and Christians are the most persecuted.
Persecution of Christians is growing around the world, and Congress needs to pay more attention to it. It needs to be a higher priority issue in our relations with all of these countries where this persecution takes place.
That persecution happens most often in the Muslim world, as the terror group identifying itself as the Islamic State of Iraq in Syria, or ISIS, sweeps across Iraq, creating a bloodbath. Iraqi Christians send out an urgent call for prayer. Tens of thousands of Christians have fled the country so far. Then there's Egypt. More than 500 Christian women have been kidnapped in that country since 2011 and forced to convert to Islam. In Nigeria, the terrorist group Boko Haram abducted nearly 300 schoolgirls and has waged a violent campaign against Christians. And in Iran, Pastor Saeed Abedini remains in prison and has endured torture for his Christian faith. The persecution takes different forms depending on the country where Christians live. In Pakistan, for example, Christians are tolerated, but they have to be careful about what they say. Simply defending their faith can lead to imprisonment and a possible death sentence there. while in Somalia, a Muslim who converts from Islam to Christianity can be killed. Today, Christians face violence, displacement, or discrimination in 110 nations around the world.
Folks, I want to remind you, I read the Quran. So when they say it's a religion of peace, no, there are lots of surahs, they call them surahs, that are basically passages in the Bible that do talk about peace, but they're always talking in the context of, do you worship Allah? If you're an infidel, if you're a Christian, then they have other verses that relate to you that are 180 degrees diametrically opposed. And here's one of them, Surah 9.5. But when the sacred months are passed away, kill the infidels. I repeat, kill the infidels, meaning non-Muslims, wherever you may find them, and kill them and besiege them and lie in wait for them in every place of observation. And then, I'm an historian too. This is in my third book as well. Basically, here's some inconvenient facts. If you're trying to make people believe that Islam is a religion of peace, well, then you have to look at this. Since the beginning of Islam's conquest, they have killed, oh boy, listen to this, 51 million Christians, 80 million Hindus, 10 million Buddhists, and 120 to 125 million Africans through their trade traffics. And they have the site down below, and you've listened to the clip. If that isn't a religion of war and of atrocity, I don't know what is. Let me go back. Maybe another little bit of history that I should tell you. Basically, there's a lot of verses in the Quran that, oh man, that sounds like the Bible. That's right out of the Bible. You need to know the history. Muhammad originally tried to put himself forward as a prophet, and he tried to go to the Christian community, and he was rejected. And that led to what? That led to his policy of not converting through scripture, through love, through peace, through all the things that Christ represented. But as we're going to see in a while, it led to conversion by force. And that means all of these people that you see here had to die because they had a quest to dominate the world. Let's go on down to the next slide, and we'll bring some more history into this. And let's play this video first real quick. I mean, this is scary, but there's no graphic pictures, but I need you to see this clip.
Another round of horrific video have been released by the Islamic State. So far, it seems, inside Libya in two different states of the Islamic State, as they call it, showing Christians being beheaded and shot on a live video after a 29 minutes long video explaining how the Islamic State will be treating with Christians inside their own territories. And it seems that the only options they given Christians there is either by joining Islam or paying what has been sort of a translation of an Islamic fee to give them the chance to live as Christians without being harmed. They must pay that fee as long as they want.
All right, some more history. So people today probably don't know what I'm going to talk about right here, but we fought an ongoing on-again, off-again war with Islam and the Christians for 1,400 years. And for a while, one would rule and then the other would rule, and went back and forth like a seesaw. But here's what was going on. If a nation was conquered by Islam, then what happened is you had three choices: convert to Islam. If you didn't want to do that, you wanted to keep your religion, you could do that, but then you were forced to pay a servitude tax. And in those days, they created the star that you see right here. And that was then later adopted by the Jews, I should say by Hitler, and the Jews were forced to wear it, signifying that they were Jews. But it had been used way, way back to signify here's what happens. If you choose to keep your religion, you had to wear a necklace. That means you had paid your servitude tax, or you had to wear the star. And when you were walking down the street, if an Islamic person were to walk by, you were filth, and you were instructed to cross to the other side of the street. And so you had two choices: convert to Islam, don't convert and pay a tax, or if you chose not to do either one, then you were beheaded like the people that you saw in that video. So to be a martyr, there's I can't believe people buy into this, but if you commit some kind of horrendous act and you kill Christians, basically you get 72 virgins in paradise. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I can handle 72 women. I think that would be a problem for me. Let's go on down, and we're going to break it down further. You really need to understand the history. You need to understand the agendas that are behind what we're seeing in the Iraq war right today. And you need to understand that we can't think about it ever in terms of any nation. You can't think about Russia, about China, about India, about Iran, about the United States. They're all governed by a global shadow government that wants to control the entire world, just like Islam does. And here's what they have to say. We shall have world government, whether or not you like it. The only question is whether world government will be by what? By conquest or consent. Folks, that's jihad. And that was right here in the United States by James P. Warburg, representing the Rothtown banking concern, while speaking before the U.S. Senate, threatening the U.S. Senate. And nobody did anything. That was in 1950. You get an idea of who we're fighting against, about who the enemy is? Pure demonic, pure evil, willing to do anything. Let's go to the next slide, and we're going to break this down a little further. You got to go back to the Bible. You got to study it. I spent, I don't know how long, dissecting the book of Revelation, and this is in my third book. So what you're looking at that bottom right, you're looking at the combination beast in the book of Revelation. And let's break it down for you a little bit. That first figure is a lion, and that happens to be the symbol for a nation that you know well, England. And it was said that it would be the mouthpiece for the beast. And today, English is the world's recognized language. And then over to the left, there's a beast with 4 heads, and that is a leopard. And it just so happens that the Bible tells us how to recognize that. Every time a leader or a nation falls and rises again, they get a new head. So you had the second or the Third World Reich. Now, all of a sudden, in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, and you had the Fourth Reich, and that's Germany, and they have been an aggressor nation. And then you go on down, you've got the bear, and the bear is involved in a war right now. But don't worry, the Bible tells us what the outcome is going to be. The bear is going to go back to sleep. So the bear is going to come out, and it's going to do something ferocious, like maybe fight a war and kill a few million people, but then it's going to go back to sleep until the appointed time. And then we have a beast, the dragon, the devil, and we have somebody sitting on top of it. And it tells us in the Bible how to recognize it. It's a woman. And churches are called women. And this particular church, it says, has every abomination you can imagine. And it drinks out of a golden cup anointed with, or adorned with jewels. And it has within its confines people who wear purple and crimson wardrobes. Go back and read it, folks. Go back and do your homework. There can be nobody that it's describing other than the Catholic Church. So that's what you've got going on. And now let's go up. And I want you to see truly that we are sleeping with the enemy. What we consider to be our greatest ally is Europe. And they have been and always will be our enemy. It was England that we left when we came here seeking freedom of religion, seeking the ability to own property. And it is that coalition of nations that you see in this description of the beast. And now we're going to go over to some of the things that are happening currently in Europe. And you've got the head of the EU, and basically she's being asked a question here. And here it is. Do you agree that the EU provides Ukraine with enough support not to lose the war, but not enough to win the war? Now, does that sound familiar? Let's look at Bush when he announced after 9/11 that we were going to war. It was going to be a generational war lasting 30 years or more. And when we went to Vietnam, it lasted for a couple of decades. And then we found out that the war was unwinnable and we could have ended it any time we want. So basically, the UN is puppeted by the global financial elite, and they are part of the beast system. And the show I was going to do this week was a deep dive on that topic. But I decided to do this instead because it's more important, because I think people are absolutely petrified of what's going on and they're afraid it's going to be World War III. It's not, folks. It's going to look like it, but it's not going to be World War III. That's not what God showed me. That's not what my Bible tells me. Let's go on down, and we're going to break down just a little bit more on the EU. And the person that we're talking about here is von der Leyen, and she is the president of the Economic Commission. It means that she's the person that sits in Brussels and controls what the 27 nations in the EU are allowed to do. And guess what? The people in the EU are not happy with her. She wasn't elected. She's an unelected bureaucrat telling nations what they can and cannot do and interfering in their affairs. And they're absolutely fed up. So there's a revolt going on in the EU, and it reminds me of something that's happening right here near to us in Canada, where Alberta has stepped up and said, hey, America, hey, Donald Trump, we want to do a pipeline deal with you. Bingo. And then they said, hey, you know what? We're going to pass a petition and we're going to get a vote and see if we can't get out from under Canada and become the 51st state in the United States. And then the other Western provinces, which are rich in minerals, are looking at Alberta and saying, we might want to follow your lead. And that's exactly what's happening here with von der Leyen. Basically, it's been disclosed that she's an authoritarian who grossly overreaches her control and literally enslaves the nations, that she's involved in a number of scandals right now and corruption, that she's financially mismanaged the economics of the EU, and that she's betrayed the European people. And look at this: Germany, the largest nation in the EU, France, the second largest, Italy, the third, Austria, Holland, Poland, the Netherlands, and Hungary have all stood up and says, resign. We don't want to be under you. We don't want to have a leader who is basically controlling us. I don't think I asked you to play that clip, so if my producer would play that clip, I'd appreciate it.
The cameras were rolling, the chamber was packed, and what happened next will go down as the most brutal political destruction ever broadcast live to millions. Ursula von der Leyen walked into that parliament chamber expecting another routine session. What she got instead was a public execution so vicious, so coordinated, so absolutely devastating that within hours, entire nations erupted in protest. The streets of Brussels exploded. Berlin descended into chaos. Paris burned with rage. And the message from the people was deafening and crystal clear. She must go now. But here is what they are not telling you. This is not just about one woman's career ending in flames. This is the beginning of the end for the entire European Union as we know it. The dominoes are falling faster than anyone predicted. The anger is real. The economic collapse is accelerating. And the clock is ticking down to zero. What you are about to witness is the real-time disintegration of a superpower that took decades to build.
All right, folks, if you've been following me, what have I been saying? The kingdoms of man must fall. Capitalism has to fall because it's basically based on greed. Communism has to fall because it's based on oppression. And we're going to have a new economic system, God's economic system. That's not a debt-based system. That's a system based on God's economic system, on commodities that can't be controlled and can't be manipulated, that give us the ability to have a decent standard of living and stop hoarding things and make things that last for generations so that we can stop wasting the resources and damaging our nation and damaging the planet. So I want to go back now. That's kind of set us up for the next slide. And I want to go to the next slide, which is another thing that I think people don't think about when they think about the Iranian war that's going on right now. And one of the reasons that the people in the EU are so mad at von der Leyen is because she imposed upon them the Green New Deal, that $93 trillion deal that now has been discussed by Trump and other people in the U.S. administration, and says, well, how are you going to pay for that? That's only $600,000 per U.S. citizen. Where are you going to get the money? So basically what's happening in Europe is they found out that all these solar panels and these wind panels turn out to be the most inefficient energy supply you could possibly have with the greatest cost, because what do they want to do? They want to drive nations into submission by driving them into absolute debt and making them dependent. Because if you can control the energy, you can control everything. Because if you can't afford to basically pay for your energy. If you can't afford to pay for your food, if everything is priced out, that's absolute slavery. So let's go down. So here, wind and solar are absolutely unreliable. They're the most expensive forms of energy you can have. They kill the birds, they kill the fish, they require silver, and disposal pollutes the environment, and we need that silver for other things because we're going into unbelievable industrial revolution led by the United States, and we can't do it without silver. So we have to expose the Green New Deal scam. And then the thing that you don't know is look at those panels, look at those when they basically have rules as to how efficient a solar panel can be. If it's above 30% efficiency, you can't even install it. And guess what? They tell us, oh, we're going to have zero carbon emission. No, you're not, because those solar panels and those wind farms are connected to the grid. And by the time they transfer the paltry amount of energy that they created to its source, they can lose up to 60% of the efficiency. So it's a scam from the beginning to the absolute end. And it's just another way to drive people into economic servitude so that they can control all the necessities of life. And there's something that I'm going to be doing in the next couple of weeks as soon as I can see what's the most important thing. And here's what I'm going to be talking about. And it's very important, folks. Carbon is not our issue. Yes, we have to address it. And yes, it is a issue. But what's really far more important is there's only about 1.5% of the water that's on this planet that is clean and usable for drinking and for irrigation and etc. And we are drying up our aquifers at an alarming rate. And here's what you probably don't know, because you probably didn't study geology the way I do. So here's what you need to know. If we dry those aquifers up, which we are drying up, and which is a principal cause of why we're having all these sinkholes, at some point, if the water is depleted enough, it loses the soil loses its elasticity, and they're not salvageable. So basically, we could be looking at a situation where we take the current grain belts of the world and we so deplete them that they can't be salvaged, bringing famine upon the world. We have a while, but not a whole long time. If we're going to avoid a famine, then we need to learn the truth about the new Green Deal and what we need to do to actually save this planet and to keep people from having a biblical level famine. Let's go on down to the next slide. And we're going to see, oh, this is a conspiracy. No, this is truth. This is fact. Look at the pictures. You've got a Democratic socialist. You've got the leader of the Democratic Party, and I don't know what you call him, her, except just confused and a liar and a crook. And then you've got the Muslims represented, and then down below you got Gaddafi, and look, he's standing with the same collection of people, the same socialists and the same agenda, and they're all puppeted by who? By the global puppet masters who really run and control every nation in the world. So when you think of this, you can't think about an individual nation. You have to think deep into the coalitions that they have formed, because the number one thing they want to do is to create order out of chaos. And the number one easiest way to do that is to bankrupt people, to make them be dependent on the government, and to put them in a situation where they have no hope. They're just look at what's happening in China. People are laying down because they say there's absolutely no hope. So they're driving us just like cattle, just like cattle, into a pen where we have no place to go and where they want to make us submit. It's not going to happen. Let's go to the next slide. And this is in my third book as well. When I wrote this, and this was part of that book, it was quite a while ago, and people weren't ready for it. But here's what I need to tell you. I need to tell you that when the election was coming, I heard tapes, and some of the Islamic leaders were saying, don't worry, we're going to get our man in the White House. And that man happened to be Barack Obama. And look at those pictures. They're depicting in the New York Magazine him and his wife as being Islamic and being basically traitors to the United States. And when the anthem is playing in that bottom picture, he's not putting his hand over his heart. And then that plane, that's pallets of money that were given to Iran and was used for what? To pay for terrorist activity. And now I'm going to read you some things here on this slide so that you can understand what this man said, and we still elected him. Or did we? No, maybe we didn't elect him. Maybe the election was stolen like so many others. So here's what I want to tell you. This is his words, Obama's words. The sweetest sound I know is the Muslim call to prayer. And that makes him a Muslim and makes us infidels. And did you know that if you become a Muslim, if you say that call to prayer, and then you would later decide, no, I want to be a Christian instead, they have a right to kill you. That's part of their Sharia law. And we can't have that in this country. And then the next one, another thing he said, he would disarm America to a level, are you ready for it, acceptable to his Muslim brothers. And he did. When Trump came back in, he had to spend $1 trillion to bring the U.S. military back into fighting stance. And then he also said, I will stand with the Muslims should the political wind shift in an ugly direction. And that's out of Audacity for Hope on page 261. And then he went on to say he refused to place his hand over his heart. I didn't say it, but you can see it in the picture down there. And then women, when asked, oh, this was a good one. This was on PBN, I think it's called the Lear Report. And he was asked about his faith, and he responded caught off guard. You mean my Muslim faith? So we have a man who is alleged to be a homosexual, is alleged to be a man who basically drove America into more debt. There's the 43 presidents that preceded him, not a one drove America into the degree of debt that he did. This was a man who was put in to orchestrate the collapse of the United States of America. And if they had gone down and gotten the rest of their work done, America would be done by now. But for God and but for him placing Donald Trump in the presidency of the United States, the man that I believe God anointed, our David and our Cyrus, to close our border and to protect our nation and rebuild it. So here's the last thing. I found solace, this is Obama talking, in nursing a perverse sense of grievance, animosity against my mother's race, against you and me, against the nation that represents the people that represent the endemic people of the United States of America. He's telling us, I'm your enemy. I'm a Muslim, and I am dedicated to destroying the United States of America. And let's go to the next slide. And what we see here is that if you know anything about politics the way I do, you see that all those people up there are socialist. They're basically committed to collapsing America. They're all tied to various different scandals, and they have doomed their party. They're losing credibility so fast you can't believe. And now we're having whistleblowers come out by the droves. And as soon as we get the truth and the true understanding that we haven't had a fair election in the last 100 years, the Democratic Party is literally going to dissolve, and it's just going to have to regroup, maybe rename itself, but there's not going to be anybody left that has any credibility within the Democratic Party, or as I call them, the Democratic Party. Let's go on down to the next slide, and we're going to break this down a little bit further. And so what you're seeing is finally recognitions of what Islam stands for. And Donald Trump has stood up and he's seen what's happening over in Europe, and he's talked about it. And Donald Trump is pushing for a ban on Sharia law. So let me give you an understanding. Remember now, the women are treated like cattle, like personal property. So if you happen to live, say, in Texas, and where they have some Sharia courts, and you got married to a Muslim, and basically you married in that court system, in the Sharia system, well, you're not married under Texas law. And now if you go to get a divorce, all that man has to do is say, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. And it's as you were never married, and you have no rights whatsoever, and he gets everything, and you get kicked out into the street. And then in Texas, basically, they're seeing that with these mosques being built and with them pushing for Sharia law, that Texas, I think maybe today, is voting for a ban on Sharia law. A nation divided cannot stand. So they're dividing us based on ethnicity, based on financial status, based on religion, based on every single solitary thing you can imagine. A nation divided cannot stand, and that's right in your Bible. But God is going to unite us because he's going to show us the truth, and the truth is going to set us free. Let's go on down to the next slide, and we're going to go over to the lady who started all this turmoil that's basically going to bring the house of cards down in Europe, and that is the Prime Minister of Italy. And boy, they set a trap for her, and they were going to basically say, you're in deep debt, and your GDP is 135%, and therefore we're going to take financial responsibility away from you, and we're going to determine whether Italy can pass a budget. We have to approve it. And so they made some horrible threats against her, but God is just, but for God, here's what happened. When they formed the European Union, it formed initially as a trade agreement. Then they had a common currency, the euro, and then they tried, operative word, to create a constitution. But there were some nations that said, we see this, we see what Brussels is, we see this as an unelected, bureaucratic, socialist, communist organization, and we won't approve it. So they went around them and did a treaty. But guess what? Something's been disclosed recently. There was a loophole, something they didn't figure, and it takes us to a situation where it's kind of analogous to what's happening in Canada. So this lady, whose name is Georgia Maloney, there we go, she has stood up and she says, Trump, I'd like to meet with you, and I'd like to see if we can negotiate a deal. I have looked at the treaty, and I believe that I have the right to function as a sovereign nation, and I want to make a deal with you. So basically, this is kind of breaking, and so we don't have all the details, but I'm telling you what it looks like is contained in it. The reason she's in such debt is because she's the place that most of the boats land when they come to Europe. It is Italy. And yet the EU is giving her no money to support that burden of what coming in. So now she's making a deal. She says, Trump, we need some military assistance from you. So she's going to put her naval ships out past the 10-mile line. She's going to turn the ships away before they get into territorial waters. And she's asked Trump for some assistance, probably surveillance. I'm not quite sure. But there's other agreements that have been made. So she wants to enter into an agreement outside of NATO for security agreements with the United States. And then she wants to enter into a trade agreement with the United States outside of NATO. And then she wants to make agreements with the United States, with Donald Trump, for some kind of a military accord. And they basically tearing NATO apart. And then we've already got 8 nations that are saying, go, girl, go. We're with you. We don't want to be controlled by a bureaucratic government that we never elected, that has our best interests, no, not at heart, that has the full intention of serving the global financial elite to the detriment of we, the people of Europe. And so basically, look at this other picture over here. Does this look like something you might have seen in the United States? It's the global elite. What's it say? Muslim Lives Matter, just like Black Lives Matter. They just keep recreating themselves. And then Maloney has also basically said that the cabinet approves a new anti-immigration package. So she's now going to try to do what Trump's doing, to basically keep the immigrants from coming in and to deport as many of them as they can. But unfortunately, this has been going on over there since at least the Arab Spring. And so the question I have, is it too late? And this is a wake-up call for the United States of America. America needs to act now to secure sovereignty. So we saw that Texas is beginning to act, and Trump is talking about acting. But let's look at this clip that we've got here and break this down so you can see just a little deeper what's involved.
Italy is on the verge of a decision that most people haven't fully grasped yet. This isn't a small policy change. It's a move that could redefine public life, national identity, and the very idea of sovereignty in one of Europe's oldest nations. Historians may look back on this moment and say, that was the turning point. The moment Italy chose whether its culture, law, and traditions would endure or be compromised. Because the Brothers of Italy party, led by Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, is preparing a nationwide ban on its Muslim community, a sweeping measure that would touch schools, shops, and offices with fines reaching up to $3,000. A move so consequential it could redefine public life, challenge religious norms, and assert national sovereignty in ways Europe hasn't seen in decades. And this isn't just a European story. What happens here sends a warning to the world and to America, because the cultural, legal, and moral debates unfolding in Italy are happening everywhere. Public spaces, faith, and national identity are under pressure, and the choices leaders make now will echo for centuries.
So I want to punctuate something. This is not, let's go to the next slide. I think we have that up as I talk about this next piece. So basically what I want to tell you is that this is not about religious discrimination. This is about national sovereignty. America was founded on a set of principles, and we are a nation that's governed by laws. And our founders said that those laws were not made on the laws of man. They were based upon the 10 commandments of God. And if we look at what Sharia law stands for versus what our Constitution stands for, we have rights under the Constitution, a lot of rights. And what happens, let me give you an extreme example. If you're a woman in Islam and you commit adultery, they can stone you, they can cut your nose off, they can do whatever they want, they can kill you. And the law says, that's fine, you committed adultery. We can't have those kind of laws in the United States of America. We're here with a governmental system that guarantees sovereign rights to the people, rights that we would lose under Sharia law. So what's going on? Finally, we're waking up. Look over to the far left, and here you go. The Supreme Court wants to ban dual citizenship from holding office in the United States of America. And what's that have to do with the Bible? It says you can't serve two masters because you'll serve one and not the other. So basically, you can't have politicians in our government that hold citizenship in nations that are for Sharia law, for dominating the entire system. So they get in there and they have all this money that they get you to send them, and the whole time they're undermining our Constitution and our government and the very freedoms that we came here to establish. Let's go to the other side. And we've got another situation happening. We're beginning to wake up. And Senator Tommy Somerville, I guess is how you pronounce that, introduces proposal to do what? To ban Sharia law across the entire United States. And Donald Trump is likewise doing it. We have to stand up. And as we go further into this, you're going to understand that that's absolutely essential. So let's go. That's going to be in part 2. Let's go to the next slide. And I want to make an announcement. I'm going to be going down on March the 28th and 29th to Florida with a friend of mine, Carmine, and his Quantum Summit. And there's the link. You can click on it. And if you care to go down beforehand, if you go to that link, it'll tell you about it. But he's having a meet and greet on the 27th. So if there's anybody who follows me who'd like to meet me, come down to that. And if you follow Mel, then you'll know what he's all about. He's about XRP. He's about gold. He's about the reset. He's about mostly financial stuff, but not exclusively. So let's go down to the next slide. And here we are. Here's another announcement. God said, when everything is ready to fall, I'll bring you out and you'll tell the truth, and the truth will set people free. So this book is now available. You can click on that QR code, and we've just opened a merch store. So you can get cups, you can get polo shirts, you can get t-shirts, you can get hoodies, all available on our website, all opening up today, all being announced today. So please go take a look. And if you're not somebody who follows me and you're hesitant as to whether you want to buy my book, then you can go there and you can get a free chapter that you can read. But I'm telling you this, God has prepared me for 57 years. And he told me all along, at the appointed time, I will bring you out to tell the truth that will open the people's eyes, that will set them free. I hope you can see how complicated this situation is. And what you have just seen me go through, I guarantee you there's not another podcaster out there, there's not another person on a major news outlet that is breaking this story down in the level of intricacy that I do. because that's what God has prepared me for, to be able to have an extraordinary memory that allows me to put the pieces together that allow you to see the intricacies that other people don't see, so that you can see everything from the 60,000 foot level, and you can walk away saying, gosh, now I understand. And why is this so important? Because when we take down Iran and the people get their freedom, it's not over. You've got all these other issues that you have to deal with. You've got our relationship with the EU that we have to come to grips with. We've got the Green New Deal that we have to come to grips. We have the voting rights that we have to come to grips with. We have election theft that we have to come to grips with. And in the next series tomorrow, you'll get into something very important and very shocking, and that is birth as a weapon. It's population. So with that, we're ready to wrap up today. I hope you'll come back and join me in a moment, please. If you've ever thought about subscribing, now's the time. And this is a crucially important video. This one and tomorrow's as well. So please share it with every person you know, because when this is over, it's going to look very scary going through it. And when it's over, it's not over. It's just that the people of Iran may have their freedom, but the things that led to this crisis in the first place will still be out there, raw, working behind the scenes, and you need to understand. That's why I have written the books that I write, because God promised me that he would give me the information I needed to open people's eyes, to set the captives free. So this book is called what? Restoring the Republic. And you need to know what's in it so that we don't repeat this, so we can learn from the lessons of history and we cannot go down this path again. So with that, I thank you for being here today. Come back and join me tomorrow. I think there's one more slide, and just give you the last chance to look at that book and click on that QR code if you want. So with that, we will see you tomorrow, I hope.